What is up, guys? Welcome to another JellyPod episode number 42 here, and we are with Sheldon Hunt from Sundial. Now, as a lot of people know, that I'm a really big fan of the Cardano and the Bitcoin ecosystem. And whenever I can cover a project that's doing both, it's kind of like the dream world for me. And that's exactly what Sundial is. Their aim is to really supercharge both the Cardano and, of course, hear the founder story of Sheldon. Now, Sheldon, welcome to the podcast, man. The first question that I like to ask everyone for the first thing is, what's your story? What's your journey? How did you get into crypto? I know you have a pretty extensive history of working in different Cardano Foundation entities and Emergo and Intersect. What's like the story?
Oh man. Well, first off, like Jason, dude, thank you so much for having me. Great to be on. So really appreciate it. And so, yeah, for everybody watching, this is unusual, right? It's Jason and I reporting in from our respective homes with the parents. So
Yes,
you guys get to take in this glorious background. It's a little bit unstable. So if you see any dogs go running by, my apologies in advance. But yeah, well, a bit of like a quick answer to that question. So I could be here all day talking about it. Of course, everybody likes to talk about themselves, but I got to be reasonable here, kind of keep it nice and concise. But I've had really probably one of the most remarkable experiences being able to work so closely with the Cardano community for years. And it's been the privilege of a lifetime, to be honest with you. So I got involved in crypto back in the day, just through Bitcoin meetups, actually. So I'm Canadian, out of university. I studied nothing related to tech. Actually, I studied history and political science, Asia Pacific studies, got a job with the Canadian government, was posted to Hong Kong, loved tech, and went to the Bitcoin meetups and met Vitalik there and some other big brains. And yeah, got involved early on with some really cool stuff and learned a lot. I have been in and out of crypto ever since, but these last couple of years just really committed to it. So yeah, I've done some stuff with Near, done some stuff across the Ethereum ecosystem, got pulled in to do stuff with IOG now a little more than 2.5 years ago to help design what was to become all things like the Age of Voltaire. And then moving over to Intersect, got that all stood up. And then, yeah, head of the Cardano ecosystem with Emergo. And then, as everybody knows, right, all of that exciting momentum that we had last year, the end of last year, around Cardano becoming the layer 2 for Bitcoin. A little bit outrageous. That was not really my intention that narrative takes off, but it did get the gears turning where I'm why don't we actually do that? Why don't we take the best of Cardano, but have it be, a sliced off to serve the best interests of Bitcoin? And so that's the whole kind of genesis of Sundial, where I get to work with Anastasia Labs and Fluid Tokens, all of these awesome guys to create, I would dare say, is one of the most innovative UTXO solutions out there to kind of build Sundial, one of the first layer 2s for Cardano. And so, yeah, so that's kind of my journey in a nutshell. There's a lot more skipping over, but it's best to kind of keep it as that for now.
Yeah. And one of the questions I had was, what made you so interested in Cardano to the point where you wanted to work in CF and Emergo or Intersect or IOG? I don't believe it was CF, but what was kind of the fire to really take this on?
Well, the community is just awesome on the one hand, but having been in the space for as long as I have been, and just to be mindful of what's out there, the tech is just genuinely awesome. I think it is undervalued in the wider space, how great non-custodial staking is. The assurances that you have with the Cardano model is just incredible, right? Just to be deterministic, it is really kind of the next best evolution on top of what is available on the Bitcoin side of things. And so that's what really has kept me stuck around, just the tech and community. And yeah, I went through the Draper program with Sundial, wrapped up about 2 weeks ago, but that was an almost 6-week program. And even the Draper team, the investors there in Silicon Valley were saying they were shocked, blown away by the quality of Cardano projects, because they had no idea. And it actually just jumps over everything that they are seeing. So yeah, streets ahead of other ecosystems, even like the Bitcoin builders, Stellar, and all of these other like groups that go through these programs, the quality of entrepreneurs and builders in Cardano is just next level. So it's something really commendable. It's very sticky, and I love it.
Yeah, it's funny that you brought up Draper because I actually talked with Monroe from Bodega, who is there, and I've talked to Raul from Fluid, who you know as well, and they were just telling me how awesome of an experience it was being able to talk to these VCs, the education, the networking. Like, what was your experience there? Because was there a lot of talk on this sort of bridge between Cardano and Bitcoin when it came to sort of pitching ideas from the Cardano projects?
Oh, absolutely. It was a huge part of what we were talking about there. So we got into the program largely because of some of the great work that has been put together by a guy named Jaymon from Jamaica, doing like the Turtles project that he's been working on. He went through Draper some years ago and had been kind of raging about Cardano to the Draper team. And finally, they kind of came around. They had some calls with myself when I was actually back at Emergo and then the CF, and we convinced them that, yeah, let's roll the dice on a Catalyst proposal to like dip their toes in. And it was really excellent. The whole thing was really well put together. And some like the major takeaways, like you could do in an afternoon what would normally take our respective teams months to coordinate on, which was in itself incredibly valuable, right? Amazing to talk with the VCs, amazing to kind of get into Silicon Valley and kind of like wave the flag of Cardano. But it was great to like be there with all of these other guys. And a big part of what got Draper himself, like personally, Tim Draper, excited. He's a big Bitcoin maxi himself. The whole narrative of Bitcoin and Cardano coming together, it just like it's yeses across the board. Got everybody excited. And so it was something that was encouraged as we went through the program that like all these Cardano guys, don't just limit yourself to selling to Cardano. Cardano for Cardano is not going to be a viable business model. So think about Cardano for the world and Cardano for Bitcoin plus. And so I think it landed really well. And a lot of guys, a lot of projects came out of that with a really revamped approach to how they're going to take their businesses forward, which is super cool.
That's awesome. And speaking of businesses, I've been looking through Sundial and checking out your site and all this stuff. You know, what are you trying to do at Sundial? Like, for those that have never heard of it, what is
Yes.
Sundial?
So if you've never heard of it, that's okay. So what we're essentially doing is we are working with some other big brains in the Cardano space to take the best of Cardano's backend infrastructure, some of the tech, some of the best dApps, and bundle it all together to create a layer 2 for both Bitcoin and Cardano. We're essentially like a UTXO superchain. So on the EVM side of things, they've got their own layer 2 ecosystem and things kind of plug in and it all kind of works. There's not really anything on the EVM side of things, or sorry, the UTXO side. So Bitcoin stands alone from Litecoin, which stands alone from Cardano, stands alone. Like it's all just their own little kingdoms, and that's fine. But what we can do with Sundial now, with some of the tech coming out with ZK bridges and ZK proofs, what you can do like with like beamless, like token standards, stuff that like BitLayer is working on, that Fluid Tokens is working on, that Bitcoin OS is working on. You can now do amazing things you couldn't do a few years ago. And so, yeah, essentially, Sundial is the smart contract, the DeFi layer for Bitcoin. And we are very unique in this position where there isn't really much competition. There are people who are trying to do Bitcoin layer 2s, but they're trying to just jam in stuff from the EVM side. And the consensus mechanisms don't really work. Some of the math doesn't really work. Some of the staking is a little bit off. So it doesn't naturally fit together. Where on the Cardano side, it's just perfect. It naturally fits. The Cardano community and all these dApps, they need liquidity. And then on the Bitcoin side, they need functionality. They need more yield generation. They need more users. And so it's just a match made in heaven for what we're doing here.
Questions I've had, because I've been in an ecosystem for a while. There is this huge sort of run for like layer 2s and Bitcoin Fi. And like you said, a lot of these different layer 2s that I think of are sort of EVM kind of really, you got to trust a lot of things. What exactly is making Sundial different here? And I know there's like a lot of people have been talking about the UTXO comparison for non-technical people, like what does that actually mean?
Yes.
And how is this different from all these other layer twos?
Yes. Well, so it's a good question. And I should maybe like begin and caution by saying like, not to like downput anybody. Like I know like the Build on Bitcoin guys, the Bob guys, Rich from CoreDAO, really great guy. So there's really some very innovative things that are happening on the Bitcoin side of things, or layer twos and yield generation, Babylon and Stacks. So there's all of these projects. They're all really cool. But I do believe that we've got something very unique on the Cardano side of things, which is just much more UTXO focused. So something that stands out different from all of the others is the fact that you've got a layer of security that just is unmatched, right? We don't have to worry about, wallet draining on the Cardano side of things. You don't have to worry about just even like some of the gas competition, right? Gas kind of going up. As you see on the Ethereum side. So there's a number of things that just make the user experience a lot easier. So you've got some deterministic fees. Things are going to be nice and stable. Things are going to be secure. We've got to improve, and I think we've already made a lot of improvements around UX and UI to kind of come and then surpass the levels that you see on Solana and Ethereum. That is like the one big thing I think we could be further improving upon. But once we get that, basically we've got an incredible user experience, and then on the back end, some assurances and some security that our competitors can't really compete with. And so I think that will go a long way. And then ultimately also like for say like Babylon or Stacks, some of these other guys, they are usually just standalone like DeFi projects. Maybe it's just yield generation and that's kind of it. For so many in the crypto space, you need to raise tens of millions of dollars in VC funding to go and build a community. On the Sundial side of things, on the Cardano side of things, we already have a community. We already have an ecosystem. We already have all of these builders. So we don't need to worry about any of that. On day one, you flip the switch and we've got Bitcoin DeFi. So IOG, we're also partners with IOG and like the demo that was done in Las Vegas, just to be able to move runes and ordinals around. You can do all kinds of things with DeFi, and you can, just inherit a vibrant ecosystem. And so we save years and millions of dollars to hit the ground running.
I think one of the most interesting points you brought up thinking about was established community on Cardano. Because, one of the things that I was always thinking of with this is they're simply wanting to stay on Bitcoin and maybe do like layer one activities and stuff. You do have a percentage, though, that are willing to sort of test out these layer twos. One of the things that was interesting, though, is I was always thinking, how do you acquire people from the Bitcoin community to get into the Cardano community? But what's interesting is there's already a lot of people in the Cardano community, example, and want to leverage their Bitcoin, and they already trust Cardano. So you don't even so in the idealistic scenario, you have a lot of Bitcoin maxis that have never experienced Cardano start to use Cardano. But even if that does not happen, you have a lot of already Cardano users that have Bitcoin already that are wanting to use their Bitcoin. So you already interesting. I don't know why I never really thought of it that way.
Yeah, so we're starting from a position of strength, but of course we don't want to just end it at that. Of course, so a lot of what we're doing with Sundials, it's going to be orange, it'll be yellow. We're in the colors of Bitcoin. We're going to Bitcoin conferences. We're extending the olive branch and saying like, hey, we're one of you, and that goes a long way as well. So having Cardano as the starting point, that's unparalleled. To have that community, that's like the secret sauce, and from there we can do so much more. And so we're talking with other institutions that want to bring more Bitcoin to Cardano through Sundial. And so it's just the beginning. Even if we're just marginally successful, it's going to be huge for the whole ecosystem.
Yeah. And can you walk me through what exactly the use Sundial would be? Because when I went on your guys' site, you were talking about lending and borrowing protocols, NFT marketplaces, wallet experience here, because this isn't just a bridge. Like, you've built a whole ecosystem around this.
Yes. And so thankfully we get to stand on the shoulders of giants here, right? So we get to work with all of the various existing Cardano projects, right? Be it Fluid tokens for the lending and borrowing, MinSwap, CSwap, all of these guys, JPEG Store, all of this is going to be compatible with Sundial through the layer 2, through like the Midgard tech stack that we're working on with Anastasia. And so that's like a huge kind of starting point. But the user experience beyond just that is primarily going to be around having, fast transactions at a lower cost, having everything be transacted in Bitcoin. So it is going to be an authentically Bitcoin layer 2. So for the foreseeable future, we're not going to have a Sundial token. It's going to be BTC and ADA. That's how it's going to be working. And the first kind of offerings are going to be around non-custodial Bitcoin staking. Right? So we see what is being done over on the Babylon side. And it's not custodial staking. They're basically the next competitor. And we think that they are struggling with scaling, and we can do all of that and then plus, right? With the ecosystem, with everything else. And so when people kind of come on and, fire up Sundial for the first time, we want to have them use their Cardano wallets. They're now kind of Sundial, Cardano, Bitcoin wallets. Begin to stake to earn some additional yield with their Bitcoin, and to also have the optionality to choose various other Bitcoin yield products. So you can maybe go for a conservative custodial 0.5%, or you can get up to 20%, a little bit more risky or a lot more risky, but you want to have that optionality to kind of be able to engage in DeFi and to have a sliding scale of risk appetite that corresponds to that returning yield. So that's the whole idea. And then beyond that, to just grow out the Cardano ecosystem as a starting point, and then bring in new builders to just take it to new heights.
So was it hard for the projects that are already on Cardano to was it like you mentioned Fluid and JPEG Story? Is this like a plug and play type thing where now all of a sudden Sundial is able to be activated on that? How does that work?
Yeah, it's just a plug and play because it's a layer 2 of Cardano. So everything is interoperable up into Sundial. The only thing that you need to have be considered for the various dApps there, the various projects, is when you do have it be transacted in Bitcoin, there'll be the Babel fees. And this is thanks to the guys at Fluid Token. So everything will be in the back end switch between Bitcoin and Cardano. And then beyond that, you just do need to take into account speeds and then costs. So if costs for minting and costs for expenses goes way down and speeds go up, how is that going to affect how your smart contracts work? We would hope that some of these projects could probably battle test it in the testnet and have it be solved for in a few days, as opposed to taking months. So we think it'll be actually very seamless.
Okay, and when can people sort of expect Sundial to fully go live? I know we were both at BTC Las Vegas. We saw some stuff with Lace. There's a video. The video blew up everywhere. I should have posted a video of it, to be honest. But yeah, when and I know that your team. So how does Sundial work with Lace in that way? And when can we sort of start to expect this?
Yes. Yeah. Well, so it is a good question. So a lot of the demos we've been doing with, say, Lace or with Bitcoin OS, it's still early days. We're showing what we can do. So it'll probably take us realistically another 3 or 4 months to get to the testnet version where we get to throw things around. But then to fully go live, we're expecting the end of this year or early next year. But between now and then, there's going to be more demos, more examples of what we could do. We want to actually start to onboard new partners into Cardano through some of the partnerships we're building and some of the early Bitcoin DeFi functionality. So it'll be all kind of coming together. Some of these things are running in parallel, and it'll eventually all just unify. But it's been great so far. And yeah, working with Lace, but also a lot of the other wallets, the guys with Vesper and so many others. So we're not limiting ourselves or precluding ourselves or cutting ourselves off. We want to work with everybody in Cardano because we think it's going to be a big ecosystem win. And yeah, it's a network effect. So we're all in it together here.
Yeah. And honestly, Sheldon, I'm curious what your personal thoughts are on, where layer 2s on Cardano and all of this stuff is going, because I feel like this is one of the strongest narratives that I've been seeing recently, especially on Cardano. There's a lot of people talking about L2s like Midgard and different and then on Bitcoin side there's Bitcoin Fi, and there's a ton of money being thrown around in it. I mean, where do you see this going? Obviously, you have to be somewhat bullish on this because you decided to make a whole project on it. But yeah, I'm curious how early you think we are on this whole thing, and maybe some predictions you have.
Oh yeah, well, so I'm max bullish on this. Max bullish.
Yeah.
To your point. It's the reason I've like totally
put your life into it and work on this every day with 10 meetings type bullish. Yeah.
That's exactly it. 10 meetings at a minimum bullish. So very, very keen that this is going to be something that really does change the world, like quite literally changes the world. So if we get Bitcoin DeFi to work, I shouldn't say if, it's when we get Bitcoin DeFi to work, it is going to change the game. Nothing else will matter, right? We'll get to a point where Bitcoin and the corresponding network, the corresponding ecosystem, so this includes Cardano, we start to eat up all of these other traditional industries. And so, yeah, so I met with like Michael Saylor there back in Vegas, and it was something that some people kind of joke about, like, that's not real. But he's quite honest that he sees a world where Bitcoin gets up to like $10 million per coin. I don't think he's wrong either. And a lot of that is going to be due to the fact that we have so much utility that is added to Bitcoin through Cardano, through Sundial. And so it's really, in my mind, still early. Like the demand for Bitcoin is so much higher than gold, but the supply is so much smaller. There's just so much that can be done in terms of like tokenization of real world assets, real estate, commodities, all of these different cool plays that we just begin to scratch the surface of. So we are ridiculously early. If I'm being honest with you, I'm so optimistic. And yeah, so we get Bitcoin DeFi working. It eats Ethereum. It eats Solana. It just destroys everything else in the space. It becomes like the center hub of everything already. And it's kind of in the name Sundial, actually. So Bitcoin is the sun, and we all just kind of revolve around it. But let's kind of like put some of this Bitcoin to work. Let's make it useful. And so taking that sunlight to Sundial, now we can tell the time. You can do much more.
Hey, that's clever, man. I like that.
And so, yeah, praise be to the sun that is Bitcoin.
Yeah, dude, the Bitcoin conference just made me so bullish on Bitcoin and felt early. Because like I got into crypto back in 2017, but I didn't know what I was doing. I had no money. There was no information online. Well, very little information for regular non-dev retail people. And sometimes I kick myself because I'm like, why didn't I just stack more Bitcoin? Why did I mess with all this other, stuff? And it's funny because sometimes I feel like I'm late in 2025 and I'm like, oh man, I don't have enough Bitcoin. And then when I think about it and I go to that conference, it feels crazy early still. Like when you think about it, Bitcoin is almost entirely a store of value right now with it, but most people are viewing it as a digital gold. Now, all of a sudden, if you say, hey, we can do all these DeFi capabilities, we can have stable coins, we can have borrowing and lending, you can have yield on it. Hey, now this store of value, you can earn yield on and never even have to sell it. So when you want to compare it to something like gold, you're not like to the best to earn a yield while just passively holding gold in your house. Even if you own an ETF of gold, it's just the ETF. So what's interesting with Bitcoin is you can, if this DeFi thing can be hacked, like hacked in the sense of solved and actually not get hacked, which is secure. I think like you could genuinely in the next 15 years, like who's to say that this isn't $10 million a coin?
Yeah.
Who's does it, and it's like you're kind of so how are you? Because I mentioned that hack thing. I think this is the biggest scare of people when it talks about L2s and stuff.
Yeah.
I know you mentioned the UTXO model, but what do you say to the Bitcoin? Oh, I want to earn yield, but Stacks just had another exploit on their largest DEX, Alex and exploit.
Yes.
You have these other shitty L2 roll up EVM that, the bridges get hacked. So like, what are you saying to them?
Well, so the proof is kind of in the pudding there, right? Like not very many people are getting a chance to like peek under the hood and see what's going on with these other like would-be Bitcoin DeFi layers. And the truth is, yeah, a lot of them are built on pretty unsound ground. And there's just some shaky foundations, or sometimes the math is off for their yield generation. It's just not really there. So what I say to them is, like, come take a look at a corresponding UTXO chain that has been around for 7 years, uptime, no hacks, no downtime, no outages, no missed blocks. Like, Cardano is battle tested. And that is something that is incredibly remarkable in this space. And so something we should be proud of. And when you tell people about this, it's like pretty remarkable. So having that be like the starting point is huge. But beyond that, another big thing that separates us from many of these other like layer twos is we don't need to have any like wraps. We don't need to upgrade Bitcoin. This is a big thing. So many of these other Bitcoin L2s, be it like Starknet or Bob, they're going to need an upgrade to Bitcoin, be it with like OPCat, right? Or some other like corresponding variation of that. They might try to break it up now because it's politically unacceptable, where they need to like increase the block sizes. They need to have more mutability added into Bitcoin. Many people are going to say hard no. They don't want to do any hard forks, no soft forks. They don't want to be changing their Bitcoin. And to that we say, yes, we on the Sundial side and the Cardano side agree with you, because actually the beautiful thing about Sundial and the Cardano, we don't need to change Bitcoin. We can actually work around it. And so what the guys at Fluid Tokens, like Matteo and Raul, are working on with us here at Sundials, we can actually be plugging into Bitcoin without compromise. And for Bitcoin maxis, they love that. They love that. So don't change Bitcoin. It's perfect the way it is. No need to, worry about soft forking it or polluting the chain. We'll keep it nice and streamlined. Keep it UTXO. Keep it battle tested and secure. It's the only way forward. No compromises. Because like I mentioned it before, like the stuff with like EVM outages and hacks, as you know, right, as you were just mentioning with Stacks, even like Bybit before, right? Some of the terrible things that happen where you can lose like $1.5 billion. We can't allow for that going forward. The world will not build on systems that can be hacked like that.
Yeah, and like Dial, you guys do have a bridge, correct? And if you have a bridge, how do you keep the actual bridge secure? Because that's like been an exploit vector.
Yes, it has been. And so for us, what we're doing is actually we're not really having our own Sundial bridge. We've got a number of partners, and there are like variations. You could call them Sundial flavors of bridges through our partners. So we work with, as I was mentioning before, right? So IOG, working with BitLayer, working with Bitcoin OS, working with like Rootstock, we're working with all of these other guys. They've all got some incredible tech. So we've got multiple horses in the race. We don't want to pick one bridge or the other. And some of them aren't even like a bridge. I think some of the stuff with Ivan and Charms is really cool for a UTXO unified token standard. It's amazing. And so we can then kind of avoid some of these other pitfalls that have happened in the past. But of course, like another big factor in all this is like ZK proofs and ZK knowledge. As more of this is like deployed, or zero knowledge, I'd say, more of it is deployed, it's going to be like quite revolutionary on the security side of things. And so it's just the beginning. I think our approach of like absolute security as the number one priority is going to like go a long way. And so that's what I would say. We'll see who comes out on top in this battle for bridges or bridgeless movements of assets, because it's still early, but we want to keep the door open to everybody.
Yeah, and I think how you guys are going about things is really smart. It seems like you're really trying now talk to everyone, and I think it's a good approach, because way too many times I've seen in this space a bunch of people try to build the same things when they could work together on stuff, and instead of being a competitor, they could actually work together to come up with solutions. So I really like the approach that you're taking. If you guys are planning on launching at the end of the year, whatever the case is, you've got a good 6 months right now of really building up those partnerships, building up, okay, let's see who's actually delivering on these different things. And, let's not get too committed to one thing while you're sort of, waiting to deliver on the actual Sundial launch. So yeah, I think that's a really great route.
Yeah, so I think it's a pretty good approach, because this is like one of the big things that have frustrated me so much, like working at IOG and then working at Emergo, like to have such a vibrant ecosystem in Cardano, to have kind of like P versus P all the time, where we're just trying to like steal each other's market share, a little bit frustrating. So my whole approach here is like onboard all of these guys. We want to be in a position where we kind of like stand above that noise, and we want to empower all of these guys to think about their projects more as businesses and as opportunities to make major expansion, not just into Bitcoin, but if we do this right, we are adding, and I would dare say, it's like probably another like $1 trillion to the value of Bitcoin. We get it right. And so the opportunity is massive to win together, as opposed to like fighting over scraps. And so that's kind of what we need to think about here, get everybody aligned. And the nice thing about Sundial as well, we get to go back and have conversations with new big partners that have maybe sat on the sidelines because they maybe didn't understand Cardano before. But you throw in the Bitcoin side of things, like, oh, we know Bitcoin, we want more exposure there. All right, tell me more about this Cardano solution that you're building for Bitcoin. So it opens up new doors to new conversations, and we can do things we just couldn't have done 6-12 months ago. And so the momentum is really there.
I love it. And I saw on your guys' site too that it isn't just Bitcoin planned. I saw Litecoin. Yeah, I mean, break me through that, because isn't Litecoin and Dogecoin just forks of Bitcoin? Or at least like Doge is like a fork of Litecoin. So are they also all using the same UTXO model? I haven't looked into it as much.
Yeah, so they've got their own little tweaks on their respective models that are different now than what they were originally. But you are right that they were their own little forks of Bitcoin back in the day. So Litecoin was kind of the silver to Bitcoin's gold, and a bit of like a test environment to demo certain things that would eventually move over to Bitcoin. It's kind of transitioned away from just being a test bed these days. It is its own kind of like store of value. But there's a vibrant community over at Dogecoin. You've got Bitcoin Cash even. Like there's all of these other UTXO chains that don't have smart contract capabilities, but they've got enormous communities, enormous stores of value and of capital. And if we can put this to work, all like in, once again, a unified UTXO environment powered by Cardano tech, I think that's game changing. The amount of like liquidity that is there is so much larger than all of the biggest EVM layer 2s. It's ridiculous. Everybody wants to fight for a new like EVM layer 2 or a layer 3 or a layer 4 or restaking this or that.
Yeah.
That's where all of like the VC action is. And some of these guys, and there's newsletters on X, they just talk about the latest like layer 3, this, that. I believe ultimately none of that is going to matter, because you're fighting over like TVL of like maybe $1 billion, maybe this or that, or a few $100 million. We get like Litecoin, we get Dogecoin. Having that be unlocked for like the highest echelons of like DeFi functionality, that's where we want to be. And once again, even that just changes the world. So it's pretty powerful.
I haven't even seen anyone talking about it either. Like, I know I've seen a lot of people talk Doge. That's why when I saw it on the side, I laughed a little bit, because you know, I had gotten into Doginals for a very brief point in time. It was, you know, on Bitcoin, you have the ordinals, which are like NFTs. And then on Doge, you have Doginals. And it's still a really small ecosystem over there, mostly because people don't know about it. But also, like you said, the capabilities are just very layer ones, you know, and it seems like the same for Litecoin. So I see the value, and all of this would be, so once you have, let's say, Bitcoin, and then you start expanding out and you do Litecoin and Doge, this would all once again be using Cardano dApps?
Yes, exactly.
On the layer 1. Well, the Cardano dApps, yeah, okay.
It'll be Cardano dApps. It'll be on the layer 2 though, because
the layer 2,
some of these guys, they won't be able to natively plug in to Cardano, and that is fine. But on the layer 2, it all plugs in, and so it becomes essentially like the super UTXO layer 2 for all of these chains. But under the hood, it's all Cardano tech, and it's all the Cardano dApps that are actually being put to work. So we want to actually bring over their respective communities and unify. So yeah, for anybody who's coming for like Doge or Litecoin watching this, like get plugged into the Cardano side of things. And for all the Cardano people watching, do spend some time and look into what's happening with Dogecoin, Litecoin, because we want to be brothers in arms as we go forward.
Love it. And getting back into kind of the personal founder side, because I'm curious about this, taking on an ambitious project like this is pretty difficult, I would guess. You know, you're moving around with all these partners, tech that's still emerging. Like kind of walk me through your life. Like what's kind of your day-to-day look like? What are some of the challenges that you've been faced out? Like what gave you the desire to build this out too?
Well, it's just like about being in the right place at the right time, and like knowing the right people and believing that we can, through our connections and through just knowing outstanding individuals, we can come together and solve for some pretty amazing stuff. So the time is really now. Like it just kind of like struck me basically like a bolt of lightning. I was in Hong Kong last year, and this was after the Cardano Summit, and just thinking about like, how are we going to take all of this forward? What are going to be some inevitable next steps? And it dawned on me that Sundial, or a variation of like a Bitcoin layer 2 using Cardano, it was going to be inevitable. Someone needed to do it. Why not myself? Why not go for it and use everything I had learned building out Ethereum back in the day, building out Cardano, being the head of the ecosystem there, and just kind of like run with things. And so it just seemed so natural. Like I had to do it. It would have been insane not to. But it is certainly stressful, good sir. And you know this, right? Yeah. Running projects, it's not an easy thing to do. So you actually carry the hopes and dreams of people along with you. And that is something that motivates me, and I'm sure it motivates you as well. It can also keep you up at night without a doubt, but it is a higher calling. And so I can sleep easy at night knowing that I'm doing something good for a lot of people. And so that's a big motivating factor. It's really quite encouraging. But the day-to-day is really like, usually it's like nonstop meetings or nonstop coordination, going and traveling around the world. On paper, I'm supposed to be living in Singapore, but I haven't been there in more than 3 months now. I'm here in Toronto, was in Vegas last week, on to Washington to do some political outreach to people there to kind of promote Bitcoin and pro-crypto regulation. Then I'm on to New York for a little bit, and then to Prague for BTC Prague. So I'm going to meet up again with some of the Bitcoin maxis and really say, hey, I'm here with you guys. I'm one of you. This is a Bitcoin layer 2. And then the circus moves on. Continue to travel around the world. There's just unending conferences. I've been a big proponent of actually having Cardano be represented at conferences for a long time. Nobody wanted to pay for it. Everybody was pointing at like, oh, CF, you do this. IOG, you do this. Emergo, you do this. A little bit frustrating. I hope now we can actually get some movement from the Treasury and the community to put forward proposals to actually have people go to these events, because it is important. Certainly it is a digital space, but you can do so much more in person in terms of like rapport building and like just syncing up on like values. It's stuff you can't do over a computer screen. And so I'm a big proponent of being out there, shaking hands and letting people know what we're doing on the Cardano side of things. And it does lead to some pretty big wins, right? Being there in person in Silicon Valley went from people saying like, oh, does anybody build on Cardano, to being like, oh my God, there's like unbelievable amounts of talent on Cardano. We just need to get them out here in person. So they maybe are living in Japan, or they're in the Midwest, or they're all throughout Europe. There's nobody in Silicon Valley, but now we need to get more of them coming this way because they're just such top quality. And so, yeah, that's kind of my whole day-to-day is just in person around the world, being an advocate, an ambassador, and just trying to get people synced up. Because a lot of it's also really like time management. You can get all this tech going, but it's got to come in at the right time. So you got to be ready.
Yeah, and I think there should be a big push to conferences, like you said. I mean, for me too, I try to go to a decent amount of conferences. What's hard for me is, and you're aware, in Singapore, like you live in Singapore, I live in Vietnam. It's kind of a pain flying across the world. I think for me, going to Vegas from Vietnam between the layovers took 31 hours, and then you're jet lagged like crazy. So, I mean, it's definitely exhausting to push as much as you are on these conferences and keep changing your work environment and your schedule. And I know exactly what you're going through. It's not easy. Turn zones, trying to figure out when your meetings are.
Yep. Yeah. But I found that now that I've been doing it for basically 2 years, it's gotten a lot easier. So I've committed my entire life to this. Like I don't have any family. I don't have any pets. Like my whole commitment is to Cardano and to Sundial. And it's something I know many other people can't say. They've got other responsibilities. And so it's reasonable to expect that, you can only do so much with what you're allotted. Right. And sometimes, I've got to be thankful for my particular condition, my environment, those in my family who support me in these wild goose chases. So we do what we can with the opportunities that we've got in front of us. And so, I'm doing what I can, but it's still just a start. It's not easy, but I couldn't imagine myself doing anything else right now.
And do you have any like quick pieces of advice to, people that want to be founders in the future, or, current founders out there right now that you've learned along your journey?
Oh, yes. Well, if there's anybody like kind of like listening in and is thinking about being an entrepreneur, I would say just do it. Have some serious like sit down thinks about how this would like affect your life. Do talk with like your loved ones about this, because it is going to be a journey, not just for yourself, but for others as well. It's something that we don't always think about, is when you're making these big life choices, you're also making choices for other people, because you're going to be shifting how you conduct yourself, where you go, and everything else. And so having like the right support means everything. And that is a big thing. Other like advice is that it can be both more difficult and much easier to do than you imagine. Much more difficult in the sense that there's going to be like pressures and unforeseen consequences and things that will surprise you. And those will be like those hard days where it's like, oh man, do I really want to be doing this? Was this really what I signed up for? But you got to power on, because those are inevitable. And it'll be also easier because you'll find that there will be people who will be there to offer you assistance. They will offer you a hand and can power on. And so just kind of go for it. If anybody's got any questions or, wants to bounce any ideas off of, I'm always here, got an open door policy on X. So always keen to see more people kind of stepping up and being entrepreneurs. And I would say like, it's still early to like what we were talking about before. We've got to like think more about our projects as businesses, right? Where are we servicing people? How are we helping to make the world a better place? And be beyond just our own walled garden of Cardano. Look to onboard those Web2 normies, those no coiners. What would get them interested in what we're doing? And so, get to kind of their level. And that goes a long way. And so, all in all, it's been an incredibly rewarding experience, and I encourage others to, roll the dice, take the gamble, go for it.
100% agree. 100% agree. I tell people all the time, you just got to shoot your shot. And, I think part of entrepreneurship and running a business is I think the thing that holds a lot of people back is they think they have to have all the answers and everything figured. Entrepreneurship is the journey of keep learning and keep advancing, and you're never going to have all the answers. I mean, even for me, I've been running Jelly Cubes for about 3 years now. And every month I look back, I'm like, oh, I would have done this differently because I learned this, but that's just part of the process and journey. And, I think if you roll the dice and you have some perseverance and you're willing to go through those times of like kind of figuring it out and BS, it just refines you into someone that can handle even larger problems in the future. You said, I've been doing this travel thing for 2 years. It was hard at first, but now I'm kind of used to it. So it's not as hard anymore. And I think that's just the core of everything in entrepreneurship.
Yeah, absolutely. Just get out there. Just get out there. Take your shot, as you're saying, because you will be shocked that you will rise to the occasion. You will rise to the occasion. And no missed opportunities to learn as well.
Love it. Well, Sheldon, this has been great. I really just have one last question I'd like to ask at the end of each of these, and that's where do you hope to see Sundial in the longer term? Like, let's say, which is crazy in crypto. Where do you hope to see the project?
Oh, yes. Well, so I know we are going to be a big part of the solutions to Bitcoin DeFi. I know that we're going to make it happen. But beyond that, I think through what we're going to do with Sundial and using the Cardano community, the tech stack, and everything that we've been building here for years, the momentum is going to carry over into Bitcoin, and we are going to start to eat up the traditional world. We're going to start to change people's lives in a meaningful way. And so I'm hoping, yeah, 5 years from now, maybe 10 years from now, Bitcoin will be over $1 million, maybe $5 million per token or BTC. I think ADA is going to be way up there, and we hope Sundial is going to be a lot of the back-end piping that is making all of that work and solving, yeah, really to basically bank the unbanked, or to unbank the banked in some ways as well, and to, yeah, really revolutionize what we all originally got into this space for in the first place. And so, yeah, I couldn't be more excited about where we go from here.
Let's get it. Best of luck on that journey too. I like it. I like hearing ambitious ideas like this with big goals, and I think you can pull it off, man. I really do. I mean, it's hard to bet against someone that's going to all these conferences and showing up and speaking on their project and making partnerships and seeing what can happen. I feel like a lot of this leap was almost a frustration of and that sort of propelled you to actually take the step and just send it as the founder yourself and just going on that mission. So yeah, man, best of luck with everything. I see it too. I've been paying attention to the Bitcoin data, honestly. And I see how it can play out. But yeah, man, was there anything else you wanted to say before we wrap up today? I also appreciate.
Yes, well, just want to say, Jason, thank you so much for having me, man. I really appreciate being here. It's like great to chat with you. Great honor, and yeah, hope to be back here on like a new version of this, and maybe 6 or 12 months from now to update you.
Yeah, in 6 or yeah, that would be great, actually.
Let's do it, man. Let's do it.
Awesome. Well, thank you once again, Sheldon. Good luck on everything. Thank you for those that have tuned in today.